Hello and welcome back. We're going to be jumping back into the mercerized bodice. Today we're going to be finishing up the body of the bodice and getting started on the sleeves. But before we do that, the last video that I tried to upload for this was about the making of the collar, and something went wrong. I uploaded it and then I deleted all of the footage from my computer, and then I got a message that it had not uploaded correctly, and then I didn't have the footage anymore, so there was nothing I could do about that. So before we jump into the actual making of the bodice and the actual content for today, let's just talk very briefly about how I did the collar. So the pattern for this collar is self-drafted. So you can see that the collar it's an entirely separate piece from the rest of the bodice. I made it separately and then just sewed it on here, and then another row of stitches here. And it's made out of the mercerized cotton with this sort of diaphanous layer of silk organza over top of it. And it hooks up the other side like that, and then hooks in the back. And I've got it interlined with 2 layers of cotton batting. And I don't know if that's historically accurate. I've handled some extant 1890s bodices where it feels like they might have done that with the collars. So it's an educated guess, but I don't know for sure. This little piece here is so the security chain on my brooch can connect there in case the clasp on my brooch ever goes. And that is it. Now back to your regularly scheduled content. Okay, so as far as the sleeves go, my initial plan was to do like a big puffy sleeve with a sleeve bustle and all of that kind of stuff, like this example. But then I realized that I'm going to have this, what is it called in this? I realized that I'm going to have this, they call it a bretelle. So I'm going to have this bretelle thing here. So obviously having really sticky, outy, uppy sleeves won't work with that. So I have decided I'm just gonna go with these sleeves shown here. It's a fitted sleeve. Zoom out. It's a fitted sleeve with a sleeve puff sewn on over top of it. So what I'm gonna do my button making supplies are getting in the way. What I'm gonna do is sew or cut these kind of fitted sleeves out of the lining fabric, and then I'm going to cut the cotton sateen, the mercerized cotton, up to here. So I'm going to cut out enough to go to, actually probably up to here, enough mercerized cotton to go up to here, and then the sleeve puff is going to come down to here. So I'm not going to bother cutting out mercerized cotton for this part up here, because it'll just make it that much thicker, that much heavier, that much hotter. And I've already got a collar with 2 layers of cotton batting in it, so it's already going to be kind of a toasty dress. So anything I can do to minimize heat and weight will be good. So I'm only going to cut out the mercerized cotton up to here. And I'm going to do that now. Once I'd gotten all of the sleeves cut out, I then set about attaching the fashion fabric bits to the lining bits. Alright, there are the sleeves. Again, forgive the button stuff in the background. You can see they've only got the mercerized cotton up to just above the elbow. This part will not be visible. So now it's time to start cutting out the sleeve puffs. That's the sleeve puff pattern. It's on the fold there, and I'm going to need to lengthen it a little bit because I lengthened the sleeves as well. Now, you can see on the original that the sleeve puff, or the puffed sleeve, is not lined, it's just the silk. However, this is a silk taffeta, I believe. Or it could be that, what's that really lightweight version of taffeta? I can't remember, I'll put it up on screen. so it's able to really kind of hold its shape. Here, I'll show on the skirt. The mercerized cotton that this is made out of is much more drapey and heavy, so it's not going to hold any sort of shape. So I'm going to need to flatline it with just some white cotton to make it just a little bit crisper. The pattern says that you can line it with, like, what did they say, netting or something. I think that's not necessary and also not entirely accurate. So yes, I'm going to use the stiff cotton that I've used for lining the rest of it. There are the sleeve puffs. They are all cut out and everything, and they're pinned to their lining layers. And I'm going to baste that down by machine. It's not the most tidy way of doing it, but these are going to be like gathered and all drapey, so it's not really going to matter if there's a little bit of puckering or bubbling. You're just not going to be able to see it. But before I do that, I'm going to make the piping for the ends of the cuffs. So I've got the cuffs done. They're just finished with some simple piping. I haven't put the buttons on yet, but I'll do that later. And I just did this all while I was in meetings for work and stuff like that. Similarly, I also got all of the boning sewn in. So I was thinking that I was gonna, oh yeah, I also have the sleeve puffs lined and basted. And I was thinking that I would work on the sleeves right now, but actually I'm going to set these aside and get the bodice finished up, like the bodice portion of it, before I start working on the sleeves anymore. So I want to do the waist stay right now. So I have this piece of twill tape that's been cut and hemmed to the right size, and I have these vintage hooks that are quite beefy, so I think those will be perfect to go around to act as the waist stay hook things. My grandmother bought these in like the 60s or 70s. So I'm going to get the hooks sewn onto the twill tape and then sew the whole waist stay into the bodice. Normally when I do waist stays, I put the waist stay on and then put the boning on over the waist stay, because I think that the waist stay will kind of pull the bones inwards. But I've noticed with original antique Victorian bodices, the waist stay is almost always over top of the bones. So I'm going to do that, and it's just kind of secured on with like a X-shaped stitch. So I'm going to do that this time, and we're going to see how that goes. Wish me luck. After finishing up the waist stay, it was time to go back to cuff work. Each cuff has 5 buttons covered with the mercerized cotton that I made out of a kit that my grandmother had that she bought in the 1960s or 70s, where you just wrap the fabric around a thing and make the button. So that was a fun process, and now I'm making the button loops here, and I'm making them out of black silk thread. And what I did was to make a loop with the thread and then go back over and make another loop the same size in the exact same place, and then do that again. So I had 3 little loops, and then I would buttonhole stitch around these loops all the way around to kind of almost embroider all of the thread that created the loops together into one, and that makes it very strong. I don't know if this is exactly how button loops were made in the day, but it works. I'm not going to speed up this part of the video because I want you to get as clear of a view of what I'm doing as you possibly can, and that's going to be kind of difficult, to do even if I don't speed it up, but it'll be impossible to do if I do speed it up. So this part of the video is not going to be sped up. But before we go any further, it's time for a bird break. Sure. It was then back to work on the sleeve puff. So the way these sleeves work, you have to gather up the bottom part of the sleeve puff, and I prefer to do that by hand, but you can do it by machine. And then you attach that to the fitted portion of the sleeve. You put them together, right sides together, and you sew it on around the fitted portion of the sleeve. However, because of the way the sleeve works, you have to have both of these sleeve parts, the fitted part of the sleeve and the sleeve puff, be sewn up into their tubular form when you put on the puff. So that makes it very, very difficult to sew the bottom part of the puff on by machine. I guess it could technically be possible, but it seemed like a lot of wrangling and a lot of headache. So I ended up just sewing on the bottom part of this puff by hand with a back stitch. Make sure it was nice and strong. All right, and that should sum it up for today. Thank you so much for watching. A huge thank you to Mary Royal, Kit Kat Stitch, Sandra White, Emily Donnelly, and River Scholl for supporting this channel on Patreon. If you would also like to support this channel on Patreon, there will be a link in the description. If you cannot afford to support me there, or if you just don't want to, then that's fine, no hard feelings. I will also link to my Instagram in the description if you'd like to follow me there. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and did I forget one? I think I got them all. Oh, turn on the notification bell. YouTube has gotten so complicated these days. My traditional lament. All right, I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.